My own mother screamed in court that I was mentally incompetent. She said I had been unstable my whole life. She said I should never be trusted with money. And she said the court should appoint her to control my inheritance. I didn't say a single word. Not when she pointed at me. Not when her voice echoed across the courtroom. And definitely not when she told the judge that I had manipulated my own grandmother. Because I already knew something she didn't. The judge did too. And in less than an hour, my mother's entire plan was about to collapse in front of everyone. But to understand how we got to that moment, you need to understand who my mother really is. And what she did to my grandmother. My name is Nancy Berglund. I'm 33 years old and I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. For the past 7 years I have worked as a certified fraud examiner. My job is very specific. I investigate financial crimes committed against elderly people. Forged checks, fake power of attorney documents, manipulated wills. People like to think crimes against seniors are rare. They aren't. In fact, they're some of the most common financial crimes in America. Most victims never even report them, because the person stealing from them is usually someone they trust. A child, a nephew, a caregiver, or a spouse. I've spent my career studying those crimes, learning the patterns, following the paper trails, and testifying in court when those trails lead somewhere ugly. Over the last 7 years, I have testified in 38 cases. 31 of them ended in convictions. 11 of those testimonies happened in front of the exact same judge who was sitting in that courtroom the day my mother called me insane. Judge Patricia Kowalczyk. She once said something about me on the record that stuck with me. She said I was one of the most credible expert witnesses she had encountered in 20 years on the bench. My mother didn't know any of that, because we hadn't spoken in 19 years. When I was 14 years old, my parents divorced. It wasn't peaceful. It wasn't mature. It was a disaster. My father moved to Oregon almost immediately. My mother remarried within 3 months. His name was Theodore Hollister. He owned 3 laundromats in a small town outside Milwaukee. And apparently my mother decided that her new life didn't include her old daughter. She didn't fight for custody. She didn't call on birthdays. She sent exactly 1 Christmas card the first year after the divorce. Then she disappeared completely. I never heard from her again. The person who raised me wasn't my mother. It was my grandmother, Dorothy Berglund. Grandma Dorothy lived in a small house in Eau Claire. She had been a 3rd-grade teacher for 36 years. Her salary had never been impressive, but she was careful with money. Painfully careful. Every receipt went into a labeled envelope. Every bill was paid early. Every Sunday morning she sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, 2 sugars and a splash of milk, balancing her checkbook. She knew exactly where every dollar went. Looking back, she probably knew more about financial accountability than most professional accountants. At the time, I thought she was just organized. Now I realize she was teaching me something, without ever intending to. Grandma Dorothy passed away 8 months ago. Congestive heart failure. She was 81 years old. She died peacefully in the same house she had lived in for more than 4 decades. I was there when it happened, holding her hand. 3 weeks after the funeral, I received a letter from a lawyer. His name was Bradley Fenwick, and he represented my mother. The letter said Daisy Hollister was contesting my grandmother's will. According to the document, Dorothy Berglund had suffered severe mental decline during her final years. It claimed I had isolated her from the rest of the family, manipulated her, convinced her to leave me everything. At first I laughed. The accusations were ridiculous. Then I kept reading. My mother wasn't just contesting the will, She was asking the court to declare me mentally incompetent. According to her petition, I had a long history of psychological instability. She claimed I couldn't be trusted to manage finances or inherit property. She requested that the court appoint a conservator. Guess who she nominated for that role? Herself. What made the letter almost funny was one specific detail. It included the exact balance of my grandmother's savings account. $167,400. My mother knew the precise dollar amount. But if someone asked whether my birthday was in March or May, she probably wouldn't know. Funny how memory works when money is involved. I assumed the accusations would collapse quickly. But that's not how the legal system works. Once someone files a petition like that, the process starts moving. Lawyers get involved. Hearings get scheduled. And the person being accused has to defend themselves, even when the accusations are absurd. My job complicated everything. When the petition became public record, my firm had a problem. My boss, Harold, called me into his office. He believed me. He trusted me. But the firm couldn't risk sending an expert witness into court, while another court was questioning her mental competence. It was a credibility issue. So he temporarily removed me from active cases. I wasn't fired, but I was benched. 7 years of professional reputation, damaged by a woman who hadn't spoken to me since I was 14. That's when I started looking at the situation the way I look at every investigation. I followed the numbers. Public financial records told a story. Theodore Hollister's laundromats were failing. Business loans, second mortgages, maxed out credit cards. Their total debt was over $340,000. Suddenly my grandmother's modest estate looked like a rescue plan. The first crack in their story appeared in my grandmother's bank account. 2 years before her death, she had added me as a joint account holder, just in case she ever needed help paying bills. I pulled the statements for the last 2 years. Then I built a spreadsheet. Because that's what I do. Numbers tell the truth. And these numbers told an ugly story. During the last 11 months of her life, there were 7 large withdrawals. $4,000, $6,000, $12,000. Cash. No explanation. Total amount, $47,850. But the real pattern appeared when I checked the dates. Every withdrawal happened within 3 days of a visit from my mother. The woman accusing me of elder abuse had been stealing from her own mother. That discovery led me to something even bigger. My grandmother's safe deposit box. Inside it was something I had never seen before. A journal, brown leather covered, neatly written entries, dated across the final 14 months of her life. And those pages told a heartbreaking story. The first entry described a phone call from my mother. The first contact in years. She sounded sweet, apologetic, said she wanted to reconnect. Grandma wrote that she didn't trust it, but she wanted to believe people could change. The next entries described visits, requests for money, excuses, medical bills, business emergencies. Each time my grandmother gave her something, $2,000, $4,000, $6,000. Then came the worst entry. My mother had brought paperwork. She told Grandma it would help manage bills if she ever got sick. Grandma signed the documents during what she described as a foggy day. Later she realized what she had signed. A power of attorney, giving Daisy control over her finances. The journal entry that followed broke my heart. Grandma wrote that she was too ashamed to tell me. She didn't want me to think she had been fooled. So instead she documented everything. Every visit. Every withdrawal. Every lie. Because that's who she was. She believed in records, paper trails, truth written down. The final entry in the journal was addressed directly to me. She said she knew Daisy would come for the money after she died. She said she wanted me to have proof. She wrote that I was stronger than she had ever been, and she knew I would fight. I sat inside that bank vault for 20 minutes crying. Then I started working. Because the journal wasn't the only evidence. The power of attorney document itself had a flaw. The signature was real. My grandmother had signed it, but the notary stamp was fake. The notary listed on the document had retired years earlier. Using that stamp on a new document was a felony. And when I dug deeper into Theodore Hollister's past, the pattern became even darker. His first wife had died years earlier. His own mother had died in a nursing home. Both estates had unexplained financial gaps. Money that vanished before death. No charges were ever filed. But the pattern was clear. They had done this before. That's when I made a decision. I wasn't going to reveal my evidence immediately. Instead, I was going to let my mother walk into court believing she had already won. I would let her lie under oath. Let her accuse me. Let her build her entire case. And then, I would present the truth. Because there's one thing my grandmother taught me that never fails. People lie. Memories change. Stories get twisted. But paper trails never lie. 6 weeks later, March 14th arrived. The courtroom was quiet. Small probate hearing room. Just a few spectators. My mother walked in wearing a navy blazer and pearl earrings. Pearls that I recognized immediately. They belonged to my grandmother. She must have taken them during one of her visits. That detail made my anger colder than anything else. The hearing began. Her lawyer gave his speech. My mother stood and pointed at me. And that's when she screamed the words that started this whole story. That I was mentally incompetent, unstable, dangerous, unfit to control money. I didn't react. I didn't defend myself. I simply sat there quietly. Because I knew something she didn't. And in a moment, the judge was about to remind everyone in that courtroom exactly who I was. The courtroom went silent after my mother's outburst. Her voice had echoed across the room, sharp and emotional, the way people sound when they believe they are absolutely right. Or when they think they've already won. She stood there breathing hard, one hand still pointing in my direction. I didn't move. I didn't react. My hands stayed folded calmly on the table in front of me. Judge Patricia Kowalczyk watched the entire scene without interrupting. Her expression never changed. She simply waited until my mother finished speaking. Then she slowly turned toward my mother's attorney. "Counselor," she said calmly, "do you truly have no idea who this woman is?" The attorney blinked. His name was Bradley Fenwick, and he suddenly looked very unsure of himself. He glanced down at his notes, then back at me, then back at the judge. "Your Honor," he said carefully, "she's the respondent in this matter. She works as an accountant here in Milwaukee." The judge tilted her head slightly, the way people do when they hear something that doesn't quite make sense. "An accountant," she repeated. There was a pause. Then she looked directly at him. "You're telling this court that you filed a petition accusing this woman of financial manipulation, and you did not research her professional background." Bradley's face started to lose color. My mother looked confused. Clearly, she didn't understand what was happening yet. My attorney, Caroline Jankowski, stood up calmly beside me. She didn't rush. She didn't make a speech. She simply opened her briefcase. "Your Honor," she said, "the respondent would like to present evidence that may clarify several issues raised in the petitioner's statement." The judge nodded once. Proceed. Caroline handed a thick packet of documents to the court clerk. The clerk distributed copies to the judge and to Bradley Fenwick. Bradley flipped through the first few pages. At first his expression stayed neutral. Then something changed. His eyebrows pulled together. His eyes moved faster across the paper. He turned another page. Then another. Meanwhile, Caroline began speaking. Her voice was calm, precise, and completely unemotional. She started with the bank records. Over the final 11 months of Dorothy Berglund's life, she explained, there were 7 cash withdrawals from her primary savings account totaling $47,850. She displayed the timeline. Each withdrawal. Each date. Then she showed the next column. Visits. Every withdrawal happened within 3 days of a documented visit from Daisy Hollister. My mother shifted in her chair. Bradley looked up. Then Caroline placed another document in front of the judge. The power of attorney. She pointed to the notary stamp. The notary listed on this document, she said, Mr. Ray Gustafson, retired from practice and surrendered his notary commission in 2019. The courtroom was completely silent now. This document, she continued, is dated March 2024. Bradley's face had gone pale. My mother looked at him. He wasn't looking back. Caroline then presented the journal. She didn't read the entire thing. Just selected entries. My grandmother's words. Written in careful handwriting. Describing the visits. The money requests. The moment she realized she had signed something she didn't fully understand. And the shame she felt afterward. I watched my mother's face while those words were read aloud. Her expression went through several stages. Confusion. Shock. Then anger. Not guilt. Not regret. Just anger. The anger of someone who has been caught. Caroline closed the journal gently. Your Honor, she said, we have also provided documentation indicating that similar financial irregularities occurred during the final years of Geraldine Hollister, the petitioner's mother-in-law. That was the moment Theodore shifted in his seat. For the first time since the hearing began, Caroline continued, these materials have already been forwarded to federal authorities for review regarding possible financial exploitation of vulnerable adults. Bradley suddenly stood. Your Honor, he said quickly, we request a brief recess. The judge studied him for a moment, then nodded. 10 minutes. The room buzzed with quiet whispers as people stood and stretched. Bradley immediately leaned close to my mother and Theodore. He spoke quickly. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see my mother's reaction. Her face drained of color. Her eyes slowly turned toward me. For the first time in 19 years, my mother actually looked at me. Really looked. And I saw something in her expression I had never seen before. Recognition. Not of who I had been, but of who I had become. She finally understood something she should have realized weeks earlier. She had just accused a professional fraud investigator of committing fraud. When the court reconvened, Bradley stood again. His voice sounded smaller now. Your Honor, he said, the petitioner would like to withdraw her claim. The judge shook her head. No. The word landed heavily in the room. Given the evidence presented today, she continued, this court is not prepared to simply dismiss the matter. She looked down at the documents again. Then at my mother. These materials raise serious concerns regarding potential criminal conduct. She turned to the clerk. Please prepare a referral of this case to the district attorney's office. Then she added something else. And forward the financial documentation to the Federal Bureau of Investigation Field Office in Milwaukee. My mother's chair scraped loudly against the floor as she shifted again. Theodore stared straight ahead. The judge looked back toward me. "The petition is denied," she said calmly. "With prejudice." The gavel tapped once, and just like that, it was over. 3 days later, I received a phone call. The woman on the line introduced herself as Special Agent Tina Morales. She worked with the FBI Financial Crimes Division. Her tone was direct and professional. "We've reviewed the evidence you provided," she said, "and we've expanded the investigation." Apparently Theodore Hollister had a financial history going back 15 years that raised serious questions. Transfers, estate irregularities, suspicious withdrawals before deaths, patterns that looked very familiar to people who investigate financial crimes. On April 2nd, both Daisy and Theodore Hollister were arrested. Federal charges: wire fraud, mail fraud, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. The indictment was 18 pages long. When I finally read it, I realized something strange. My grandmother had not been their first victim. The investigation into Theodore's mother's estate revealed more than $200,000 in unexplained transfers before her death. Geraldine Hollister had owned her home outright. She had a pension. She had savings. But by the time she died, almost everything was gone. The trial lasted 2 weeks. I testified once, just long enough to explain the financial patterns. The rest of the case built itself. Records, bank transfers, fake documents, witnesses, including someone I hadn't expected. Merlin Hollister, Theodore's daughter, my former stepsister. She told investigators everything about the finances, about the control her father had over the family, about the threats that kept her silent for years. In exchange for her testimony, she received immunity. I didn't argue with that decision. Sometimes justice means choosing the truth over punishment. The verdict came quickly. Daisy Hollister was found guilty on 4 counts. She received 5 years in federal prison. Theodore Hollister was found guilty on 7 counts. He was sentenced to 6.5 years. Their properties were seized. The laundromats were liquidated. Their house was auctioned. Restitution payments were ordered for every victim the court could identify. Everything they had built with stolen money disappeared. 2 months after the sentencing, I received a letter from my mother. 6 pages. I never opened it. I handed it to my attorney. Caroline read it and summarized it in 1 sentence. "Excuses," she said. "Lots of excuses." I told her to throw it away. Some paper trails aren't worth following. My grandmother's estate was finally settled that summer. I kept the house in Eau Claire. I couldn't bring myself to sell it. Some weekends I drive there with Cameron. We sit on the porch with coffee the way Grandma used to. Sometimes we don't talk at all. Just quiet. Cameron proposed that fall. At the same restaurant where we had our first date. An Olive Garden off Route 9. Not exactly romantic by movie standards, but meaningful. And the breadsticks are unlimited. I said yes. My firm reinstated me the week after the court hearing. My boss apologized for the suspension. I told him I understood. In my line of work, credibility is everything. My first case back involved an 84-year-old woman whose nephew had stolen $89,000 from her retirement account. We recovered every dollar. He went to prison. People sometimes ask if I feel angry about what my mother did. The answer surprises them. Not really. Anger fades. What matters more is balance. People like Daisy and Theodore believe they can take whatever they want. From whoever they want. They believe kindness means weakness. That silence means defeat. They forget something very important. Silence doesn't always mean surrender. Sometimes it just means someone is gathering evidence. My mother thought I was weak because I didn't argue. She thought I was broken because I stayed quiet. She thought she could take everything from me the same way she had taken things from others. She forgot one important detail. I was raised by a woman who kept receipts. And in the end, receipts win.